fight at home. So they were giving each other the silent treatment. Is that me? So they were giving each other the silent treatment. Suddenly the man realized that the next day he had a 5 a.m. flight that he had to catch in order to head off to work. Not wanting to be the first to break the silence and lose the silent treatment, he decided to write his wife a note. He said, "Wake me up at 4 o'clock." And he decided to leave the note where his wife would see it. Next morning rolled around. 9 o'clock in the morning, he woke up. And he was furious. He was mad. He got up. He says, "I'm going to go find my wife and see what's going on." When all of a sudden he looked around and he saw another note sitting there. It said, "It's 4 o'clock. Wake up." I'd say that there was a definite lack of communication in their relationship, wouldn't you? It wasn't taking their relationship in a good direction at all. And when we lack the communication in our relationships, they're going to suffer as well. We're going to feel the effects, and worse yet, the people that we love are going to feel the effects. Good? All right, I can't see. We're going to feel the effects, and the people that we love are going to feel the effects. Is there another place I could put this that it won't? My nose. What's that? Right there? I'll plug up my nose. All right. Well, let's keep going. On this day before Valentine's Day, I wanted us to take a look at some teachings that are going to help us to understand and have better and healthier relationships with the people that we love. And if you're here tonight, don't automatically tune this out if you're not in a relationship with somebody right now, because this information tonight isn't just for lovers. It's for parents. It's for kids. It's for people that you work with. It's for leaders in groups. This information is going to help you have better relationships with all of the people in your life and help you to communicate better with them. Anytime there's a relationship in your life, you're going to be able to use this information, this knowledge, to help make that relationship better. Now, I'm a huge fan of Disney. I'm a big sucker when it comes to Disney movies. I grew up with Disney. When I was 4 years old, we headed off down to Florida to my grandfather's house. My parents threw my sister and me in the back of the car, drove down to my grandfather's house, spent 2 weeks down in Florida. Well, naturally, we had to go to Disney. 1976, first time I was at Disney. I think it was 3 years after it was opened. Every year since then, we'd go down to Disney. I'd look forward to it all year long. I love Disney, and I love the Disney movies. I love them, pretty much all of them. But even though I love Disney and I love those Disney movies, when I watch them, in the end, something just doesn't seem right. You know what I mean? Something's not right there. When I see that princess riding off with the prince into the sunset, I think, yeah, right. You know? That's not the way it happens. I mean, we're left with the impression that for the rest of their days, everything is absolutely perfect. That they wake up in the morning and they have peppermint breath. That the sun is always shining and the birds are just singing over their shoulders all the time, and they never have a fight or an argument. You know, that's the impression that we're left with, which of course is exactly how it is still with Ryan and myself. Did I say that sarcastic enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, that's the impression that we're left with, that happily ever after is the way that it's supposed to be. But in reality, we know not so far deep down inside of us, that's not the way real life is. 5 years later, Snow White probably ended up looking something like this. You know, I've met way too many husbands who were frustrated and ready to throw in the towels on their marriages because they say that they have fallen out of love with their spouse. Take Roger, for example. Roger, man, he was beat down. He was just at the bottom of his rope. Roger had a great family that he really, really loved. Roger was also a full-time fireman. He worked 42 hours a week at the fire department. When he wasn't working at the fire department, Roger had his own landscaping business. doing extra landscaping work for people, making some extra money to bring in the money so that he could buy some nice things for his family. Roger was also re-siding his house. He had brand new vinyl siding, putting it up on his house so that when his wife invited people over, she'd have a nice place for him. Roger also had a friend that was getting rid of an above-ground pool. So he went over to his friend's house and he dismantled the pool, took it home, reassembled it in his backyard so that his wife had a nice place to go in the summertime, in the middle of August when it's humid and hot out. He did all this for his wife. Roger even did the laundry for her. But after landscaping all day long, Roger had 15 minutes to pick the kids up from their soccer game, head home, jump in the shower, and then head off to his shift at the firehouse. So he does that. He goes home, takes a shower. As he's heading out the door to go to work, his wife comes up to him, and she's sobbing. And she says, "You don't love me!" And Roger's like, he didn't know what to do. He stayed for a little bit, but he had to leave. And when he left, she was still crying. As you can understand, Roger was beat down. He was thoroughly confused. He didn't know what to do. He was just wondering, what went wrong? Well, tonight we're going to solve Roger's problem. And in the process of doing that, we're going to learn about how God, the master designer and creator, has put into the blueprint of each of us a different method of how we all show love. Listen to what the psalmist says about how God has made us. He says, "Oh yes, you shaped me first inside, then out. You formed me in my mother's womb. I thank God for you. Hi, God. You're breathtaking. Body and soul, I am marvelously made. I worship in adoration. What a creation. You know me inside and out. You know every bone in my body. You know exactly how I was made, bit by bit, how I was sculpted from nothing into something. Like an open book, you watched me grow from conception to birth. All the stages of my life were spread out before you. The days of my life all prepared before I'd even lived a single day." Now, God created us with different personalities. He gave us different gifts. And He also gave us different ways to show love to people. These are ways that are sometimes referred to as languages. Think of these love languages. Think of them like this. Think of them as a fuel that fills your love tank. If you put the wrong fuel in the wrong tank, it's not going to run the engine. For example, if I go home and I go to my oil tank in the basement and I take the oil out of that and I dump that into my car's not going to run. Or if I take Frank's truck over to the gas station over here, his diesel truck, and I tell the fellow there, I said, "Fill it up regular gas." His truck's not going to run. Both of those fuels are good fuels when they're put with the right engine. But if you put them with the wrong engine, they're just going to be a mess, and the engine is going to become unhealthy. It's not going to work the way that it should. Dr. Gary Chapman, he's a pastor, and through his many years of counseling couples, he decided to take his notes and say, "Okay, I'm going to figure out what is it that people are saying most often." So he took his notes, looked at them, and said, basically, there are 5 different languages that people speak. There's 5 different love languages that couples speak. And he also says that each one of us has one primary love language that we use to give and receive love. And some people actually have a secondary language, which isn't quite as high as the first language, but it's still up there. So tonight, we're going to take a closer look at these 5 love languages, and at the end of tonight, you're going to be able to do 2 things. You're going to figure out what is the language that God has designed within you since before you were born, and you're also going to be able to understand what is the language that God has put into somebody else close to you, the language that they speak, and you're going to be able to relate to them a little bit better. When 2 people are speaking 2 different languages, neither one can communicate effectively. But when they learn the language of their partner, when they learn what language their partner's speaking, they're going to be able to connect effectively, and they're going to have their tanks filled with the right kind of fuel. And tonight, in order to do this, in order to organize these 5 languages, we're going to use a Greek word for love that means self-sacrificing love. It's the word agape. We're going to use the word agape as an acrostic to walk us through these languages. So the first letter in our acrostic is A, and it stands for acts of service. The acts of service person, they're really easy to identify. They're the ones who are always busy running around doing things. You know, they're the incredible acts of service. The acts of service person is easy to identify. They're the one who is often the busy person running around. They're the incredibly helpful person. They're the person that you know that if you went to with a job for them, they'd be more than happy to do it. The person with the language of acts of service, they show others that they love them by joyfully doing things for those people. They'll figure that you're going to appreciate the effort and the planning and the time that they put into the service that they're doing for you. The word lazy is never used to describe the acts of service person. You'll find the acts of service person cooking dinners for the mother struggling with cancer. They're going to go over their son's house and mow the lawn for him. They'll be the first one to volunteer to go fix a plumbing leak at a friend's house. They're the neighbor that goes over and shovels your driveway while you're at work and you come home and the driveway's all cleared off. That's the acts of service person. I don't think I have any of those in my neighborhood because there's still snow on my driveway. Do you have an acts of service person in your life? Do you have somebody in your life that does things for you to show you that they love you? If you have someone in your life like that, someone who's constantly serving, the way to show them that you love them is to do something for them. That's how you fill up their tanks. That's how you fill up their love tanks. It's taking their to-do list and checking off a couple items for them. It's taking the socks that are in the laundry and folding them and putting them away in their drawers because nobody likes to do that. It's washing and waxing their car, setting the table before dinner. Sometimes the acts of service person, they're going to notice the effort and the time that you put into this, and sometimes even the planning that it took to do a certain event. They're going to notice all that stuff, and that's going to speak to them and help fill up their love tank. But God didn't give us these languages just to serve other people. He gave us these languages so that we could serve Him also. God designed the acts of service person to be the one, to be the person, the faithful servant that you see around church, the one that does stuff, you know, the one who makes church run. Church wouldn't be church without these people. The acts of service person is the one who builds the sets for drama. They're the one who vacuums up the floors after church. They're the ones who sets the chairs up and breaks them down before and after remix. They're the ones who set the table with food out there. Those are the acts of service people. And God has put them in the church to use their gifts to make that happen. If you come to Grace on a Sunday morning, you'll see a guy out there in the parking lot. Whether it's 0 degrees out and the wind's blowing or if it's a hot August day, 100 degrees, you'll see this man out in the parking lot parking cars. And Steve has been there for 15-something years. Every week, Steve is out there parking cars so that nobody crashes into each other. He's using his gift to make it so that the church traffic flows smoothly. Jesus, through his life, he showed us what the acts of service language look like. John 13:5 tells us about one act that Jesus did to show the acts of service. It says about Jesus, "So he got up from the supper table, set aside his robe, and put on an apron. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the feet of the disciples, drying them with his apron." Jesus lived every day of his life serving people and serving God. Then ultimately, he displayed the greatest act of service by dying on the cross for our sins so that we could spend eternity with him in heaven. All right, we're going to move on to our second love language. The second love language in our agape word is G. G stands for gift giving. We all know the gift givers in our lives. It could be a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, a lover, a neighbor, whatever. Whoever this person is, they're the incredibly thoughtful person. They constantly keep their eyes open for what someone else may want. They are the person that goes out there and sees something on the shelf and gets it, and they're more than happy to get it for them. The gift giver views the gift as an outward sign that they were thinking about you. It's something tangible, something real that you can touch and hold that says this person thought about you and specifically picked this object out for you because they knew you'd like it. The gift giver views the gift as a symbol of that thought, as an outward expression of an invisible thought. The gift giver is the one who gives little gifts for really no specific occasion at all. It's the husband who's at work and he orders flowers for his wife to be sent home to her. It's the little boy who goes out and picks flowers from his mom's prize-winning flower garden and brings them in and gives them to her. It's the little girl who will bring you a handful of grapes when you're working at her house just because she figured that you wanted them. Those are the gift givers. Gift givers are really good friends to have, by the way, especially if they work for M&M's, because they bring you candy every time they see you, like my friend Robert. Brings you the Munch bars, which you can't buy in stores. Then you take the Munch bar and you dip it in the Dove bar. Oh, man. Anyway, I'm sorry. Can you identify the gift givers in your life? Someone who is always bringing you stuff, whether it's big or small. If you have a gift giver in your life, the way to show them that you love them, the way to fill their love tank, is to give them a gift. Give them gifts. The gift says that you were thinking about them. It lets them know that you were thinking about them. You took the time to get this symbol to show them that. And it's interesting, and it's encouraging for people who are broke, is the gift doesn't even have to cost money. I mean, you could go out, you could draw a picture and bring it to them and give it to them as a gift. You could walk through a parking lot and pick up a rock and bring it home and say, honey, I saw this rock and I thought of you. It's kind of shaped like your head. Don't say that. That'll negate the gift. Don't say that. God uses gifts to lift the spirits of others. They're the ones around church that say, look, I got this cool bookmarker for you, this cool leather bookmarker. I saw that. I picked it up for you. They're the ones who donate to other people. They say, oh, you need baby clothes? I have some. I can get them for you. They're the ones who donate the car to the family in need. Those are the gift givers. My grandmother was a gift giver. She was always giving stuff away. She'd go to church and she'd find somebody with a need. She'd give it to him. She'd leave a little bit of money, a little bit extra money in the tip for the single mother waitress. That was my grandmother. My grandmother, every time I saw her, she'd give me something. I remember when I was 17, she gave me a Father's Day card with money in it. I'm like, Grandma, I'm not a father. I'm not even close. And she's like, I know, I just wanted to get you something anyway. Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, Scott loves getting money at any time. So my grandmother was a classic gift giver. In the Bible, we see the gift giver example in Matthew 26. It says, meanwhile, Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon, a man who had previously had leprosy. While he was eating, a woman came in with a beautiful alabaster jar of expensive perfume and poured it over his head. The disciples were indignant when they saw this. What a waste, they said. It could have been sold for a high price and the money given to the poor. But Jesus, aware of this, replied, why criticize this woman for doing such a good thing for me? This woman expressed her love to Jesus by hand-selecting this item that she was going to give him. It was very shortly after this that Jesus was crucified. And as he was hanging there on the cross, in all his pain and agony, he would have been able to smell that perfume that was on his head that this woman gave him. He was hanging there, and I wonder if he said, you know, this woman gave me her very best. I wonder if that brought him any comfort in his hour of need. All right, so far in our acrostic of agape, we have A and G, and the next letter we have is A, and it stands for ample time. The ample time person places the highest value on just being around the people that they love. But it's not just being in a close proximity of the person. They'll pay attention to you. They'll pay close attention to you. Ample time people need face-to-face, focused interaction, focused time spent with another individual. The person who speaks this language isn't concerned so much about the activity as they are about the quality of conversation and attention that they're giving or receiving. They give and they feel loved when they know they have another person's undivided attention. Togetherness and quality quality of conversation are the staples for an ample time person. The ample time person isn't necessarily going to be interested in spending hours staring into another person's eyes, but they're going to connect by going for a walk with somebody around the neighborhood to look at the flowers that are blooming. They're going to go out on a Sunday morning for coffee with somebody. They're going to be the person who is just content playing a board game with somebody else. That's the ample time person. Do you have anybody like this in your life? Do you have any ample time people in your life? If you do, the way to speak their language is to set aside some distraction-free time for them, just between you and them. Could be something as simple as watching a sunset together. I have a friend, he goes out every Sunday morning. He takes his daughter out to a diner, and they eat every Sunday morning before church, just him and her, because he knows that she's an ample time person, and that's very important to her. Let me just add this. Watching television together does not speak to the ample time person. You may be in close proximity to each other, and you may be looking at it as spending time together, but the ample time person, that is not filling their love tank at all, believe me. The focus is on the television rather than on the person. Multitasking doesn't work either. Just picture the father kicking the ball around the yard with his son while the father's on the cell phone talking to somebody else. He's not with him. Or picture the wife that comes home and she's trying to have a conversation with her husband, and he's on the computer doing stuff and kind of talking to her at the same time, catching every third word. That's not ample time. Ample time is focused together, quality conversation. That's what they crave. Those with this language also going to have it repeated more often than other languages. The gift giver, they may be good with a gift once a month. That might fill their tank up, and they could go a month on that. If an ample time person goes more than a week without spending time with a person that they love, they're going to be running on fumes. What they're looking for is somebody to really be with them when they're with them. And this is how God uses the ample time person. The ample time person is the one who's going to go to the hospital and sit next to the bedside of somebody who's sick. They're going to take their time. They're going to set aside time to go to visit a lonely old man whose wife passed away a couple years ago. The ample time person is going to be the one that's going to go out to a diner and over a cup of coffee talk with the struggling parent who's dealing with the issues. Those are the ample time people. Now think back to our story of Roger, the fireman. Think back to that story of him and his wife. It turns out they were speaking two completely different languages. They were not communicating. Well, Roger ended up reading the 5 Love Languages book, and he discovered that his love language is acts of service. Well, his wife's is ample time. So while Roger's out there working 2 jobs, reciting the house, putting the pool up, doing laundry, he was thinking all along that he's showing her love, but she wasn't hearing that. What she was hearing is, he doesn't want to spend time with me. He doesn't love me. As soon as they figured that out, they got some stuff in order, they corrected it, and their marriage is doing great. They're speaking each other's language. 2 Timothy, we read about Paul. He was craving ample time to be with his loved ones. You need to understand that Paul was writing this letter to Timothy. Paul here, he's in a dark, dingy basement. Basement. He's in a dark, dingy prison. He's going to be executed very shortly. This is probably the last thing that Paul ever wrote. And he knew that his days were numbered. Only days away, he's going to be executed. He knows he's got short time, so here's what he writes to Timothy. Do your best to come with me, for Demas, in love with this present world, has deserted me and gone to Thessalonica. Crescens has gone to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia. Luke alone is with me. Get Mark and bring him with you, for he is very useful to me for ministry. Now, Luke was with them, but understand this for what it is. Luke wrote a couple of books. Luke wrote the book of Luke and the book of Acts. Pretty fairly lengthy books. Luke was a doctor. Luke was kind of an egghead. He's one of these guys that you would see in the library with his nose in the book all the time. Not the best company to be around. So Paul here's like, Luke alone is with me. Come to me, Timothy. Help me out here. And, bring Mark with you. I know we had a falling out back then, but bring him also. I want to spend time with him. I want to work this, I just want to spend time with him. That's what Paul's saying here. He was craving ample time. All right, moving on to the fourth love language, physical touch. Now, when they hear this, 99% of guys' minds go to sexual touch. And they're like, yeah, that one's mine. And the 1% who didn't, they weren't paying attention. But here's the thing. Physical touch love language has very little to do with sex. So guys, don't automatically assume that this one's yours. Hear it out first and then decide. The physical touch person feels love when they come in contact with another person. They feel emotionally close when they're physically close. To these people, the physical touch communicates that I see you. I know you're here. Even with everything else going around this, I'm holding your hand and I notice you. The physical touch person isn't necessarily the huggiest person in the room either. Is that a word? Huggiest? They're not the huggiest person. What's that? Is now. I just made it up. They're not the huggiest person in the room. Yeah, sometimes they are. Sometimes they're like that little hummingbird that runs around from stranger to stranger hugging them, and they're cool with that. But they're not always, because the physical touch person, they know the weight of what they feel when they touch someone, and they're not ready to give that up to strangers or even acquaintances. They're going to save that for the people that they really love and trust. Physical touch person communicates love by walking by and kind of grabbing their arm of a person that they love, holding hands while walking down the road, walking up to somebody and giving them a shoulder rub. The physical touch person is the kid who wrestles with the dad and just craves that and wants to do that. Or the little girl who takes grandpa's hand to run off to go show him a little bug that she found. Those are the physical touch people. Are you close to a physical touch person? Do you have someone in your life that is a physical touch person? If so, the best way to show them love is simply put your arm around them. This is one of the easiest ones to do. Put your arm around them, pat them on the back, cuddle with them while watching a movie. Any touching that isn't a sexual advance for the physical touch person is going to fill their love tank. At church, you can almost always spot these people. They're the ones who are going to come up to you. They're going to put an arm around you. They're the old lady who grabs your hand, and while you're talking to her, she keeps holding on to your hand and doesn't let go. Have you had that? That's a physical touch person. Oftentimes, they serve as greeters out front. They're the ones waiting to meet the new people and give them a nice, firm handshake. A number of research projects went on about this and did studies in child development, and they found that babies who are held and hugged and kissed develop a healthier emotional life than those who are left alone for long periods of time. Physical touching speaks 10 times louder than words. My nephew, he's a physical touch kind of kid. He's 7, 6. He's a physical touch kind of kid. His birthday's in a week. He's going to be 7. He's a physical touch kind of kid. You go over there, if you sit down on the couch, he'll immediately run up and jump on your lap. He's going to jump up and show me his DS with the pictures on it, something he took. He'll jump up and just fall asleep on your lap. He just loves being in physical contact with people. Throughout the day, if you watch him, you'll see him go from relative to relative, just kind of looking for a head rub or a pat on the back or just a hug. In the Gospel according to John, we read stories that lead us to believe that John was a physical touch kind of person. Through John's book, we see that he was near Jesus. We read that many times when they were eating, he would recline on Jesus. When they would eat back in those days, they'd lay down and they would recline on each other. And you can read about that in John 13 and 23. How John craved that attention, that physical attention to be around Jesus. All right, so far we covered 4 out of the 5 love languages. We have one more to go on our acrostic, and that is E, encouraging words. I love the people that speak encouraging words. They're the great friends to have. They're the ones who can inflate your ego by telling you that you're awesome. You know, for encouraging words, people, they're going to tell you they're awesome, that you're awesome, and inflate your ego, but that's not their intention. It's not an ego-building exercise. Rather, it's an affirmation of the person of who you are and that they notice you. That's what the encouraging words person is looking to accomplish by that. Encouraging words people show their love by telling others that they matter. They're the ones who are always walking around complimenting other people. Encouraging words is the person who's always building each other's up with their words. They never seem to miss a detail of what's going on. They're the first to tell you did a great job on something. They're the one who will say, Mom, you're doing great at playing that piano. You're putting hard work in there, and I can really tell. Or, honey, that was a great dinner. You're a wonderful cook. Or, hey, Bill, you did a great job on that project. Good job. Those are the encouraging words people. Is there someone in your life who speaks that language? These people show love to others by affirming what others do, and in turn, they feel loved when other people affirm what they do. Those who speak this language of encouraging words, they long to hear what they do matters. For these people, make the effort to let them know that you notice stuff about them. Tell them that you love their new hairstyle. Compliment their cooking or compliment their witty sense of humor. If you do that, if you give them encouraging words back, words of affirmation back, you're going to be filling their love tanks with the right kind of fuel. And the people that speak this language of encouraging words, they also need to have this done more regularly. If you do this once a month, they're going to not remember it. It needs to be done on a regular basis, and it can be little tiny comments also. It doesn't have to be big things. Oh, by the way, this is how affairs start. The wife whose love tank is totally empty because her husband never gives her compliments at all, never tells her that she does anything good. She goes into work, and an innocent coworker happens to mention that he likes the outfit that she's wearing. Her love tank starts to get a little bit of fuel in it, but is not being put in there by her husband. God uses the people who speak this language to build others up in the church. They're the ones who, when you're struggling with something, they're going to tell you, everything's going to be all right. You know, you have what it takes to get through this. Or they're going to say, hey, great job worship leading up there, guys. Really great job. We appreciate what you do. That's the encouraging words person. That's the language that they speak. They even have the ability to mention details in something that you did that you didn't know that anybody noticed. Encouraging words person is going to come up, and they're going to mention those details to you. Words are incredibly powerful. Mark Twain once said this. He said, I can live for 2 months on one good compliment. He probably had the gift of encouraging words. Here's a story about Allison. Allison always wanted to be a writer, but after receiving her first rejection slip from the publisher, she gave up. One evening, her husband came to her and he said, honey, I hate to interrupt you while you're reading, but I was reading over this article that you wrote. You're a fantastic writer. Allison, you need to have this stuff published. Your words, they paint pictures in my mind. She said, you really think so? He said, I know so. I'm telling you, this is good. 10 years later, Allison has had several articles published. She has a contract for a book. She credits all of this to her husband's encouraging words. The Apostle Paul, he spoke this language to Timothy. He said, Timothy, you're going to be something someday. Paul encouraged Timothy with words of affirmation. He said these things to Timothy. He said, Timothy, I thank God for you, the God I serve with a clear conscience, just as my ancestors did. Night and day I constantly remember you in my prayers. I long to see you again, for I remember your tears when we parted, and I will be filled with joy when we're together again. Think Timothy felt loved? I guarantee he did. Well, those are the 5 love languages that God selected for us. God has built one of those love languages into each of us as our primary love languages to have as the way that we show and we receive love. Acts of service, gift-giving, ample time, physical touch, and encouraging words. As we close out, there are 3 observations that you should be aware of when striving to build healthy relationships with others. Observation 1 is we tend to discredit the languages that aren't ours. We might say something like, oh, she doesn't need me to tell her that I appreciate her. She knows it for all the stuff I do around the house. A husband might say that while the wife is crying out to him just to say some nice things to her. Just because something's not our primary love languages doesn't mean that it's not somebody else's number one. Second observation is the anti-love language communicates that I don't love you. If a husband has the primary love language of physical touch and whenever he reaches out to his wife's hand, she yanks it away, he's hearing, I don't love you. She may not intend to be communicating that, but that's what's coming through to the husband. The final observation, we're going to have to work hard to communicate the love language of others to them. It's very rare that 2 people in a relationship have the same love language. You're going to have to learn a foreign language. You're going to have to learn how to relate to the person close to you. It's going to be effort. It's going to take time. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it's definitely going to be worth it. Remember, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the one you love. So let's take our lesson for tonight from 1 John 3:18. It says, Dear children, do not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions. Would you pray with me? Lord, we thank you tonight for being so creative when you made us, for making it, for giving us all the ability to speak each other's language. We just have to put our pride aside to be able to do that. Lord, we ask you tonight that if there's anybody in here who is unclear as to what their language is, that you would reveal that to them tonight, that you'd reveal to them the language of somebody close to them so that any relationships that have been damaged, any relationships that are like Rogers that can be avoided, will be. That we'll be able to build healthy relationships with the people around us, Lord. We thank you for tonight, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we have...